The pathetic federal response to Hurricane Helene has showed us that not only is Washington dysfunctional, it's not even trying to serve the people. Instead, we serve it like livestock. So how did we get here? As with the economy, the seeds of our political crisis began 800 years ago in the Progressive era. The Progressives' big year for taking over the economy was 1913 with the Income Tax and Federal Reserve Act. But the political takeover was earlier. According to historian Murray Rothbard, it began precisely 30 years earlier with something called the Pendleton Act of 1883. The act made bureaucrats professionals who are independent of politicians. This was allegedly to fight corruption, but note that a bureaucracy that's independent of politicians is also independent of voters. After all, politicians are the only part of the government who answers to voters. So if bureaucrats don't answer to them, who do they answer to? And the answer is simple. They answer to nobody. The government bureaucracy becomes a self-serving, occupying army by design. Now, progressives do this because they've convinced themselves that government workers are omniscient angels. The act of collecting a government paycheck is a kind of purifying bath that washes away all the greed and malice of the unwashed masses over whom the government lords. Of course, after COVID, anybody who thinks bureaucrats are omniscient angels needs a lobotomy. Now, once installed with Pendleton, this independent bureaucracy was, of course, captured by the left, by socialists, because they both want the same thing, increased government control. This capture is why it feels like the world is grinding ever more socialist. The bureaucracy partners with socialists to a common end, which is government control over the people. They then use government money, your money, to propagate that takeover through academia, media, and corporations who are punished if they don't toe the line. Now, COVID showed us there is essentially no institution in the country, and really in the world, that has not been infiltrated by this toxic combination of government money and intimidation. The cartels call it plata o plomo, silver or lead, and the socialist deep state uses both. Now, over the last century, every crisis grew this deep state. World wars, Great Depression, even made-up crises like global warming and, of course, COVID. And COVID was their dream come true. It was total control. Problem, of course, is that once a wild animal tastes human blood, you can never trust it again. It's exactly what happened in a moment I think is very close to COVID, which is the wartime socialism of World War I. The men who pushed that war, men like Herbert Hoover, imposed Soviet-style economic and social controls during the war. Then once the war ended, they were very reluctant to hand that power back. In fact, they spent the rest of their careers trying to get it back. Unfortunately, the stock market crash of 1929 was the excuse they needed. They seized the commanding heights of the economy, the administrative state was born, and 100 years later, they still have it. So that all takes us to today, a totalitarian deep state that progressively seizes economic, social, and political power, enslaving us with debt, mandates, taxes, and surveillance. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The administrative state can be defeated, but not by fighting the Hydra head by head. Rather, you have to go to the source, the independent bureaucracy itself. To end the totalitarian deep state, politicians must have the ability to fire and hire every last person who works for the government, because the people must have that power, and until we abolish governments, politicians are their only voice. The only alternative is progressive enslavement by bureaucratic commissars until the people rise up and fix it kinetically. Read the rest with charts and all the gory details at profsanoj.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.